Welcome to Kalkine TV's Executive Corner Expert Talks. Sage here. We are having a very interesting discussion today with Mr. Steve Grace, founder and CEO of the Nudge Group. And the job sector has been trending with better than expected employment rates being recorded in New Zealand and USA just recently. There is hope for economic recovery after the pandemic's downturn. Designed to work with startups, scale-ups and accelerated growth businesses, the Nudge Group is a disruptive force within the recruitment industry, offering a system known as the Nudge Experience. They find talent aligned to their clients' culture, locally and globally. So bringing you live today, very excited to have Mr. Steve Grace, CEO and founder of the Nudge Group on the show. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hello, Sage. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And I'm so keen to share your insights on the show, especially at this time when the employment sector is so much in the spotlight. So your business is a sprawling entity spanning across various geographies like Australia, Europe, the UK, USA, and even Asia. Please talk about the significant factors that hinder the most while recruiting talent across these geographies, please.
That's an interesting question. So yes, we operate everywhere. I think any company I guess it depends how you look at it. If you're looking at it as an individual company that's recruiting across multiple time zones, there's huge issues around maintaining culture. There's issues around time zones. There's issues around the difference in salaries. There's difference around how people are working from home in different countries due to different COVID laws. So, I think a lot of our clients are quite distributed, as are we. And the challenges that you're facing is the world is a very different place than it was 2 years ago. Everything has changed, and each of these countries are handling their own COVID situations quite differently, which is impacting the work situations of all those organizations. So to try and have a unified workforce in that environment is proving challenging, to say the least.
Yes, you're not wrong at all. There's more to it than meets the eye, surely. And thank you for sharing your professional insights with us today. The world is dealing with the biggest crisis of all time, well, our lifetimes anyway, climate change. How do you think the lack of climate action impacts the recruitment processes of businesses? Additionally, how can businesses inculcate climate conscious efforts in their decision making?
I read this question earlier. I don't know that climate change actually affects processes. I think that perhaps companies need to be a lot more conscious of travel and the way the world is working if they are a global organization. And what I mean by that is if you go back 2-3 years, a lot of people were doing a lot of flying, who go to a lot of different countries to do essentially meetings, which for the last couple of years have been done over Zoom, Teams, Google Meetings, platforms like this, which I think has been a massive positive. I know that there is an element of meetings, the face-to-face aspect is a must, but there was also a huge amount of, I guess, negative climate effects that were being not consciously pushed, but I think unconsciously pushed by people traveling so much for work. I don't think it's something that we'll necessarily see as much of in the future. And I think because of that, recruitment processes have changed in that people are looking to position more people in other countries and have that, as we mentioned earlier, that distributed workforce, as opposed to having people in a central location and sending them out all over the place. So because of that, people are now looking to hire in different time zones, and because of the capability of working from home that didn't perhaps exist before and now does, they're able to do that. They're able to employ people in all sorts of different locations that they would never have considered before, which hopefully will reduce the amount of travel that's happening that obviously has such a negative impact. I'm talking about air travel predominantly.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's very true. Apparently people in India could see the Himalayas because of the lack of air traffic and people just on the road, full stop. Exactly right. Business travel's really been evolving now to e-meets, as we're doing.
Yes.
You work with startups, with multinational giants, so it's really the spectrum of businesses. Please talk about how the recruitment process scales depending on the size of the business.
This is a great question. And I think that there's a misconception. We probably don't work in the multinational giants. It's very much startups and scale-ups. Now, scale-ups can be billion-dollar companies, but they're probably not as big as, some of the more traditional companies. They're a lot more efficient. But regardless, I think one of the most probably misguided views is that your recruitment process needs to change based on whether you're a 2-person company or whether you're a 5,000 person company or a 25,000 person company. I don't believe it should at all. I think that when you're hiring for people, yes, you're looking for different things at different stages of your business life. But I also think that your process should remain the same. You're still looking to find out the same amount of information from people. And just because you've become a much larger organization doesn't mean your recruitment process should become longer and slower, which is often the case. I actually think it probably should be the opposite, because you should have already gotten better at, what's going to work in your organization. And I do think that a lot of talent leaders do overcomplicate their hiring processes as they get larger. And I do believe that's a mistake. I think that they'll often lose some of the best talent by doing that. And I think ultimately companies should come up with a recruitment process that works for them. They should evolve it, and they should look at it, and they should keep it going. But I don't think it should have any bearing on how big the organization is. I really don't think that should matter whatsoever.
And things like social media these days have an impact on the recruitment process. What would you say, just off the mainline discussion here, if someone's been headhunted and they've been asked to submit an application, CV and letters, the standard, what would you recommend about providing extra information, like maybe a business report or some form of portfolio of work they've done? Would you recommend that as well as the CV and the letter?
I think it's an interesting question. I think that it depends on the role that they're going for. If it's a creative kind of role, and if it's that kind of role, then absolutely, because I think if you talk about designers, or you talk about there's a huge subject at the matter of arts and STEM, which is people with creative minds coming into science, technology and engineering roles. And this is a big, big topic right now. As soon as you start to bring arts and creative minds into the recruitment process, someone's view on what is good and what is not good becomes completely subjective. So what someone views as a beautiful design, someone else may not. And it's not that they're a good or bad designer, it's that they design in a certain way. I think when you're at that stage and you're talking about roles like that, absolutely portfolios are essential, because you need to get a feel for that individual style and make sure it's going to match the style that organization is looking for. And that can be everything from web design to graphic design to the user experiences, all those kinds of really creative roles that have been coming along. I think if it's a more traditional kind of role, such as potentially a management role or a financial role or things like that, probably not as important. I think in that respect, what you've done, and I think in that respect, your resume really needs to reflect your achievements. And a lot of people fail to do that. People are very good at listing what they're responsible for, but they're not very good at listing what they've actually achieved. And if you don't know what someone's achieved, then it's no good knowing what they're responsible for. So I think those would be my advice points on that. If you're in some sort of role where you're doing a creative role, and it could even be down to programming, where things can be done in a style, then I think having a portfolio is essential. But if you're in a more traditional role, then I think it's more about what you actually achieved during that role that you should be trying to get across to the potential employer.
Thank you for that. And I guess, still on that subject, if you are following instructions, I suppose, at this early stage of interacting with the employer, that's the most important thing, would you say, rather than wanting to sell yourself more? If they just ask for letter and CV, just give them what they've asked for, would you say?
I don't think so. I think the world's changed. I think, I would say that headhunting is a term that's not used enough. It's very rare at this particular point, and the market will swing back the other way at some point, but at this particular point, there is a huge shortage of candidates all over the world. It's accentuated in certain countries more because of smaller populations, but at the end of the day, for most roles in the professional manner, which I'm assuming would be your view, is there is a shortage of candidates. There's certainly areas where there aren't, so things like hospitality and so forth, but I think if you are being headhunted, then they probably need to be courting you more than you courting them. And I think that's the way the world has gone. And I know that happens with us. No matter where we're recruiting in the world, we are having to sell those organizations a lot harder just to get them to be even considering having a conversation with them. And I think if a company, and there are still plenty out there that do, feel that someone should be very lucky to work with them, then they're very much living in the past, and they will struggle to get the best talent. It's become almost equal footing of selling on each ends, selling the benefits of them and then them selling the benefits of the company. So I don't think you should necessarily do what you're told. I think everyone in the world's a bit sick of doing what they're told. I think it's a case of trying to find, is there a mutual benefit to both of you coming together? Are those stories aligned between the individual and what they want to do and what they see, and the actual organisation and what they're trying to do at the same time? Does that make sense?
Exactly. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Really do appreciate it. So we're reaching the end of the discussion now. The COVID-19 pandemic has drastically impacted almost all markets, and now talking about recruitment with you today, how has the pandemic affected talent acquisitions? Do you think this transformation will stay in the long run, such as video interviews?
I do. I think the pandemic has affected talent acquisition in two main ways. Yes, video interviews will stay. Why will they stay? They're just so time efficient. I think, it's not as easy for people, particularly as they're working in a blended approach and a lot of them working from home. It's not as easy for them to duck out the office and go and meet a recruiter or have an interview with a client. It's not a reality. It'll still happen to a degree, and maybe it'll happen, an interview process is 3 stages, maybe it'll happen at that last stage. But I think video interviews will be a part of it going forwards. They're not going to disappear, but they won't completely dominate it like it has either. I think the other thing that's drastically changed is that what people are looking for. I think probably more unconsciously than consciously, people's brains have changed during this period of COVID. Whereas 2-3 years ago, candidates would be coming to us looking for usually a rise in money, looking at how the benefits sort of could affect them and fit in their lives, and also the education and how that was going to take them to their next role. What people are looking for now, and the two questions we get asked for the most now are, what impact can I have? I think people are looking for a role that has a greater sense of meaning. They don't just want to go into work to get themselves to their next role or to pay their bills. They actually want to feel like they're achieving something, and that's probably been the biggest change. And also this working from home thing, I think that's not going to go away. I think people are not looking to be told what to do. They don't want to be told they have to come in on a certain day or not come in on a certain day, or they have to be in 5 days or they can't come in at all. I think we go back to this case of people don't want to be told what to do anymore. They want to have the flexibility to fit their work around their life. And rather than having work-life balance, I think they want to have an integrated work-life balance. They want to blend the two together and have control over that.
That sounds great. It sounds like the sector is evolving in a very positive manner. So Steve, you're expanding globally. Nudge Group is expanding at a substantial rate. What are the near-term pipeline goals for the Nudge Group, please?
It changes daily, but I think at the moment, Australia is obviously where we were founded. The UK, I'm originally from the UK. I moved to Australia 20 years ago. Has really sort of embedded itself. Our next two countries to sort of grow and embed ourselves a little more solidly are Singapore and the US, and we're in the process of doing that. On top of that, we are hoping to expand on the 2 media channels that we have. Obviously we have our TV show, and then we also have our other website, Balance the Grind. So we really want to expand on those, and we're potentially looking at some acquisitions in the media space. And we're also looking at building an education arm to help a lot of these founders that we work with answer a lot of their questions that they struggle with as these businesses go through rapid growth, which is a very scary time for anyone. When your business is growing quickly, as ours is now, it's kind of terrifying. So to have a sort of education on where they can have access to information rather than having to go to mentors or come to me or whoever it is another sort of at service that we want to provide. And hopefully we'll get that up and running middle of next year.
Sounds great. Excited to speak to you at this time while you're preparing that, because businesses and business leaders have so much on their plates already. It must be such a relief to know they can rely on a human resources partner like yourself to help them find the right people for the roles. Thanks so much for your time and your insights today, Steve. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Sage. My pleasure.
And if you've just joined us, we had a very inspiring discussion with Mr. Steve Grace, CEO and founder of the Nudge Group, and the full recorded interview will be available at YouTube via Kalkine Media's channel. Please keep watching Kalkine for more live expert talks and market updates. And as we say, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.